It was supposed to be the proudest day of his life. James Miller, a single dad and decorated veteran, stood in the back of the crowded high school gymnasium, his worn-out jacket and tired eyes making him stand out among the polished suits and sparkling dresses of other parents. His son Michael was about to walk across that stage, cap, gown, diploma, the kind of moment James had fought through nightmares, loneliness, and endless shifts at a mechanic shop just to see. But before the ceremony even began, 2 security guards walked up to him. "Sir, you can't stay here," one said firmly. James blinked. "What? Why not? My son is graduating today." The other guard gestured to his jacket, his boots, his unshaven face. "This is a private seating area. Families of honor students only. You'll have to leave." For a moment, James couldn't breathe. Michael was an honor student. He had worked tirelessly, partly to make his father proud. But James didn't argue. Years in the military had taught him to swallow pain and keep his dignity. His heart pounded as whispers floated around him, parents staring as if he didn't belong. James clenched his fists. "I'll just stand in the back. I don't need a seat." But the guards stepped closer. "Sir, if you don't leave, we'll escort you out." James felt the sting deep in his chest. Not just humiliation, but fear. Fear that his son would look for him in the audience and find no one. The boy he'd raised single-handedly, the boy he'd promised never to let down, was about to have the biggest moment of his young life ruined because his father looked too of place. Then, just as the guards reached for his arm, a voice cut through the tension. "Stand down." The heads turned. 6 men in crisp suits and short military haircuts walked in, their presence impossible to ignore. The way they moved, calm, confident, watchful, made it clear who they were. Navy SEALs, brothers in arms. The lead SEAL, a broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" One guard stammered, "This gentleman doesn't belong." "Correction," the SEAL said firmly, pointing at James. "This man belongs more than anyone else in this room. He's one of us. He's family." A gasp rippled through the audience as the SEALs surrounded James, not in protection but in solidarity. They clasped his shoulder, straightened his jacket, and walked him down the aisle. "You're sitting front row with us, brother," one whispered. Tears blurred James's vision. He hadn't seen these men in years. Comrades from a time when he thought he'd lost everything. And yet, here they were, standing tall for him when he needed it most. When Michael's name was called, the entire auditorium erupted, but the loudest cheers came from the front row. 6 SEALs stood saluting in perfect unison as James rose to his feet, chest swelling with pride. Michael's eyes widened when he saw them, then locked onto his father's tear-streaked face. That moment, the son realizing his father was not only present but honored, burned into everyone's memory. Afterward, Michael ran straight past his teachers, his classmates, and threw his arms around James. "I knew you'd be here, Dad," he whispered. "I knew you'd never miss it." The SEALs stood nearby, smiling quietly, their presence a silent shield against the judgment and small-mindedness that had almost stolen this day. Parents who once stared in disapproval now approached James with apologies, shame written across their faces. The guards, red with embarrassment, could only mutter regrets. But James didn't dwell on that. He wasn't thinking of humiliation anymore. He was thinking of his son's smile, the brothers who had shown up for him, and the powerful truth that dignity doesn't come from appearances. It comes from sacrifice, love, and loyalty. That night, as father and son celebrated with burgers in a small diner, James looked across the table at Michael and said softly, "Remember this, son. When the world tries to tell you you don't belong, stand tall. The people who truly matter will always show up for you." Michael nodded, his eyes bright. "Just like you showed up for me." And in that moment James knew the lesson had been passed on, not about military service, not about medals or ranks, but about the kind of strength that never fades, the strength of love, loyalty, and standing by the people who mean the most. Because sometimes, heroes don't just fight battles overseas. Sometimes, they fight them right at home, in silence with dignity, until the people who care remind them they're never alone. Imagine this. You've spent years sacrificing for your child. You've worked every late shift, swallowed every bit of pride, and fought demons no one else could see, just so your kid could have a better future. And on the most important day of his life, the day he graduates, you're told you don't belong. That's exactly what happened to James Miller, a single dad and military veteran. But what happened next? No one in that gymnasium will ever forget. The storytelling builds James Miller had lived a tough life since returning home from the service. The war hadn't just left scars on his body, it had left scars on his soul, nights haunted by memories, days filled with hard work in a small-town mechanic shop just to keep food on the table. But through it all, there was one thing that kept him going: his son, Michael. The boy he raised alone after losing his wife to illness. Michael was James's pride, his anchor, his reason to keep moving forward when life felt unbearable. And today, Michael was graduating at the top of his class. Honor roll. College scholarship. Everything James had hoped his boy would achieve. James walked into the high school gym wearing the only jacket he owned that wasn't covered in grease stains. It was old, faded, and didn't fit quite right. But to him, it was enough. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here for his son. Conflict, but then, 2 security guards approached. "Sir, this section's reserved for families of honor students." James frowned. "That's why I'm here. My son's one of them." The guards exchanged a look. One smirked, the other shook his head. "Look, this area is for certain families. You'll need to leave." James felt the eyes of polished parents burning into him. He wasn't wearing a designer suit. He didn't drive a shiny new car. He didn't look like he belonged in their world. The guard repeated himself, this time harsher. "You need to step outside, sir." Pause for dramatic effect. In that moment, James's heart cracked. All he wanted was to see his boy walk that stage. But humiliation, public, crushing humiliation, was threatening to steal that away. He whispered, "Please, I'll just stand in the back. My son needs to see me here." But the guard stepped closer. "You don't belong here. Out." The twist, and just then, a voice rang out, steady, powerful. "Stand down." Every head turned. 6 men walked into the gym, tall, confident, suits sharp but their stance unmistakable. Military, Navy SEALs. The lead man pointed toward James. "This man, he belongs here more than anyone else in this room. He's one of us. He's family." The gym fell silent. Parents whispered. The guards froze. The SEALs walked straight to James, shaking his hand, patting his back, calling him brother. In seconds, the lonely veteran who'd been pushed aside was now surrounded by men who treated him like royalty. And then, they led him down the aisle. "Front row with us," one whispered. Emotional peak. When Michael's name was called, the crowd clapped. But when the SEALs stood at attention, saluting in perfect unison, the entire gym roared. Michael spotted his dad in the front row, standing tall, eyes wet with tears, flanked by the strongest men in the room. The boy's smile lit up the stage. He raised his diploma high, not for the crowd, not for the cameras, but for his father. James had never felt so proud. Not of himself, but of his son.